Alright, in this lesson we're going to be looking at circles and more specifically the area and circumference of those circles. Our essential question is, how are formulas helpful in math and science? So to begin, we're going to kind of break down the circle in little parts of it. I apologize for the unperfect circle that I have drawn. However, this is just to give you an idea. The center point, of course, is very important when you're talking about the radius and diameter. The center point must be on your diameter. So the diameter is the distance from one side of the circle to the other as it goes through that center point. So for instance, if we had this segment here, it does go from one side of the circle to the other, however, it does not go through that center point. So this segment here could not be considered the diameter. The diameter has to go through that center point. The radius is half of the diameter. It's half the distance across the circle. So it's any segment that goes from the center point to any part on the circle. So that could be a representation of the radius, as long as it goes from the center out to the circle. Okay, we're going to look at circumference first. Circumference is the distance around the circle. So what we like to think of as perimeter with triangles and rectangles, circumference is along the same lines but dealing with the circle. To find the circumference of the circle, you can use one of two formulas. You can do pi times the diameter, or if you're given the radius, you can do 2 times pi times the radius, because remember, the radius is half of the diameter, so if we multiply that by 2, then we actually are just getting the diameter. So these are equivalent formulas. So again, make sure those are written in your notes. Those do need to be memorized for testing reasons and in class. So pi times diameter, or 2 times pi times the radius. All right, let's do an example. Find the circumference of a circle with a radius of 6 millimeters. So you're not always going to be given a diagram of the circle, so you might want to start off by making a quick circle, okay? Find the circumference of this circle, the distance around it, if its radius is 6 millimeters. So what they're saying is from the center point to the circle, that is 6 millimeters. So they gave you the radius. So we just need to know that that's going to be 6. Now, since r is 6, we can use our second formula, 2 times pi times r. So we're going to do 2 times pi times r. Now, when you use pi, when you put this into your calculator, you can actually use the pi button, or you can just type in 3.14. Your answers will vary slightly. They won't be that much off. So I'm going to use the pi button, so 2 times pi times 6, and we'll round to the tenths place. So the circumference of this particular circle would be 37.7 millimeters. So don't do millimeters squared, we're not dealing with area, just make sure you label it with that unit of measurement. All right, let's look at area of circles. There's one formula we need to know for area of circles. That is pi times r squared. That means the radius squared. So let's do an example of finding the area of the circle. And remember, area is measuring the amount inside that circle. So circumference was the distance around. Now we're going to look at area. All right, so our example, find the area of a circle that has a diameter of 21 yards. So what they're giving us is the distance across the circle through the center point. And they're telling us that that diameter is 21 yards. So they gave us D. So you have to think about, what do I need for my formula? And in this case, for the formula, we need the radius. So if you're given the diameter, but you need the radius, you then have to take that diameter and divide it by 2. so that you can have that radius distance, which is only half of that diameter. So for our radius, we're going to be using 10.5. So if the diameter is 21, the radius will be 10.5. So we're going to plug that into our formula. Area is equal to pi times the radius squared. So we're going to be doing pi times 10.5 squared. You want to square your radius first and then multiply it by pi. You do not multiply and then square because you will get an incorrect and a larger number. So we're going to square 10.5, then multiply it by pi, and again I'm using the pi button. So my answer, the area of this particular circle, would be 346.4, and since this is area, we're going to label it with yards squared. So to find the area of a circle, you're going to use the formula pi times the radius squared. Okay, we're going to kind of look at semicircles real quick because you will see these when looking at finding area of complex figures. So a semicircle, just know that that's half of a circle. To find the area of a semicircle, you're going to multiply the area of a circle formula by half, since it's only half of that circle. There's two ways you can look at this formula. You can do 1/2 times pi times r squared. Or you can do pi times r squared and then just divide it by 2. So either one of these formulas will work. You can multiply it by 1/2 or you can divide it by 2. Because remember, this is the formula for area of a circle. Semicircle is half of that. Alright, so let's do this last example. We're going to find the area of the figure below. So this is a complex figure, meaning it's more than one shape involved and we want the total area. So it's going to take an extra step because we will need to add those two areas together to get the total area. So what you want to do is look at the figures involved in that complex. Sometimes it can be a triangle and a square. In our case, we have a rectangle and my version of a semicircle. One reason we know it's a semicircle is because of this distance across is going through a center point. That lets you know that diameter is there, so it has cut that circle in half. So we're going to find the area of the rectangle, then the area of the semicircle, and add them together to get the total area. So let's work with the rectangle first. Area of a rectangle is length times width. So that's going to be 10 times 8. Then we're going to talk about the circle. We've got these two dimensions that were labeled. So we have to know that if this vertical side of the rectangle is 10 inches, so will its other side, its corresponding side. So this is also the diameter of the semicircle. We need the radius, so we're going to take this because we really only need half of that, which is the radius. So we're going to say 10 divided by 2 gives us 5. So to find the area of the semicircle, we're going to do pi times 5 squared and then divide it by 2. Our rectangle's area, 10 times 8, will give us 80. And then we're going to do the pi times 5 squared. Now that I have that, I'm going to divide it by 2 because it's a semicircle. So we get 39.3 for our semicircle. So the area of the rectangle, area of the semicircle, I'm going to add those together. So our total area is going to be 119.3. And this is going to be inches squared. So there's an example of finding area of a complex figure. We'll do more examples in class.